The thud that morning, God, it was like a cannon went off, rattling every bone in my body. For a second, I just stood there, lungs locked up, staring at a world that didn't make sense anymore. I'd heard my daughter scream, "Alyssa, my girl," and then came the metal on asphalt crunch, sharp and ugly, and I knew in my gut something was horribly wrong. I was halfway to the mailbox, coffee in hand, letters under my arm, and then in a blink everything changed. Alyssa's motorized wheelchair was overturned, her small body on the burning asphalt, and an SUV, the HOA presidents of all people, looming way too close. I remember the letters scattering, fluttering to the grass as I dropped everything and ran, didn't even think, just moved. I yelled her name, barely recognizing my own voice. She was trembling, curled up, her dress bunched and stained, knuckles bleeding and eyes wide with a shock that hurt more than any injury. That moment, that stillness right after trauma, feels like time stops and your mind just spins looking for a way out. And then I saw Karen, queen of the HOA, stepping out of her perfect black SUV, one hand still clutching the wheel. That woman was infamous around our neighborhood, always scolding people about garbage cans or the color of their shutters. But this time was different. She had that look, lips pressed tight, like Alyssa was the one at fault. "What is she doing out here so close to the street?" Karen barked, not an ounce of concern in her voice. And right then, something inside me snapped. Alyssa's got spina bifida, needs that wheelchair just to move, but she's stubborn, always wanting to do everything herself. That morning she'd been trying to put up a welcome sign for my dad, her grandpa, who was supposed to visit. She made that sign herself, colored it all to surprise him. Now she was on the pavement, and Karen cared more about the paint on her car than the girl she'd just hit. "If her wheelchair scratched my SUV, I expect compensation," Karen hissed. I swear I could have screamed, but Alyssa needed me calm. So I knelt down, checked her, made sure she could move her arms and legs. Relief like I've never known washed over me when she nodded. Meanwhile, Karen stood tapping her foot, muttering about property rules. "This is private property, there are rules," she kept saying, as if rules could put my daughter back together. You ever meet someone who really believes their rules matter more than people? That was Karen. But I didn't have time for her. I grabbed my phone, hands shaking, and dialed 911. "We have a child hit by a car. She's in a wheelchair," I blurted out. Operator kept me steady, told me to keep Alyssa comfortable. I tried. Karen, meanwhile, was snapping photos of her bumper, muttering about insurance, completely ignoring the real emergency. While I checked Alyssa's scrapes and her busted wheelchair motor half hanging out, I saw a swirl of dust down the street. Dad's last text flashed in my mind. "Landing in 3 minutes." I'd thought he meant by car, but the sound overhead, deep chopping, told me otherwise. My dad's military retired colonel never really does anything halfway. Sure enough, a big black helicopter started circling. That's my dad, I thought, even as sirens wailed closer. Karen looked up, mouth open, as the Black Hawk circled and set down behind a row of houses. Neighbors started coming out, gawking, phones up. For once, Karen wasn't the center of attention. Paramedics pulled up, rushed to Alyssa. One checked her arm, another checked the wheelchair. Karen actually tried to butt in, asking for someone to document her car. The medic gave her a death glare and said, "Ma'am, step back. We're treating a child." Karen huffed, but finally shut up. That's when Dad showed up, stomping across the yard in full uniform with a couple of soldiers in tow. Even the grass looked nervous under his boots. He went straight to Alyssa. Voice, gentle, hands, sure. "Is she all right?" he asked. When I explained, he turned to Karen, who suddenly looked a whole lot smaller, and laid it out. "My granddaughter was on her property. You drove into her. Don't think we're letting this slide." Karen tried to bluster, but Dad's voice could freeze water. The medics decided to take Alyssa to the hospital for x-rays. Dad said he'd handle things here, and when he said it, I believed him. In the ambulance, Alyssa squeezed my hand, asking if her wheelchair would be okay. I promised we'd fix it no matter what. At the hospital, it turned out her arm was fractured, her hip badly bruised, but nothing life-threatening. Dad texted me updates, police on site, neighbors giving statements, plenty of witness accounts. He wasn't leaving anything to chance. By the time we got home, Alyssa's arm was in a cast and a neighbor had loaned us an old wheelchair. My phone buzzed all night, neighbors checking in, some furious, others worried. Karen, though, she went on a tear online, posting about how Alyssa lunged into her path and the danger of unsupervised disabled children. She even called my dad's helicopter an intimidation tactic, as if he planned a military show just to spite her. People weren't having it. Folks posted their own stories, doorbell videos, even a clip showing Karen speeding around the corner. A week later, Dad surprised Alyssa with a visit from a wheelchair technician, a friend from his Army days who fixed up her chair better than new. But before we could settle, Karen marched up the walkway, announcing an emergency HOA meeting. "Unsafe wheelchair usage in common areas," she said, glaring. Dad calmly told her to leave unless she wanted harassment charges added. Karen spat threats and stormed off, but Alyssa was rattled, scared Karen might never let up. At the HOA meeting, the community center was packed. Karen blustered through her speech about reckless behavior and disrupting the peace. But as soon as neighbors spoke up, Mrs. Florence with the speed limit reminder, another neighbor with doorbell footage showing Karen distracted at the wheel the tide turned. Dad spoke last, clear and direct, stating what happened and why he'd landed that Black Hawk. "I won't let my granddaughter be blamed for someone else's carelessness," he said, and you could feel the room shift. Karen accused everyone of a smear campaign, but the board had heard enough. Mrs. Florence called for her removal pending investigation, passed on the spot. Karen stormed out, shrieking betrayal. For the first time, she didn't get the last word. The police charged her with reckless driving. She tried to lawyer up, but there was too much evidence, witnesses, videos, even expert reports. Her power evaporated. Alyssa healed, the wheelchair was fixed, and neighbors who'd always kept their distance started stopping by offering support. The Blackhawk incident became legend. Some people joked that the next time Karen came back, Dad would parachute in just to scare her off. When court day came, Alyssa insisted on testifying. She described the crash, Karen's coldness, and the fear that followed. Karen tried to twist the facts, but the judge wasn't having it, found her guilty, hit her with fines, and even threatened to yank her license if she didn't straighten up. Karen's house went up for sale not long after. Without her, the neighborhood felt lighter, almost like we all breathed easier. Dad stuck around until Alyssa was fully back on her feet or well wheels. The next time he visited, he came in a regular sedan, joking that the Blackhawk was for special occasions. Alyssa laughed, hugging him tight. That experience, as awful as it was, brought us and our neighbors together. Folks remembered that bullies lose their power when we stand up to them. You know what I mean? It's not about dramatic rescues or having military connections. It's about doing right by each other, refusing to let fear or power trips run the show. Alyssa went back to painting flowers on her wheelchair, waving at neighbors, her spirit unbroken. And every so often, Dad sends us a text, landing in 3 minutes. Be ready, just to see if we're still paying attention. That's what I hope you take from this stand-up, even if your voice shakes, even if you're scared. The Karens of the world aren't invincible. And sometimes the whole block is just waiting for someone to say, enough. So if you've got your own HOA horror story or a bully in your life, share it. Let people know they're not alone. Because the only way things change is when folks stop letting fear drive the story.